I don't know how many of you have paid attention to this. It's one of those things that could get lost in the weeds over the course of a season. But the minutes for the Phoenix Suns are starting to pile up. The other night against Memphis, Durant played 42 minutes. Bradley Beal logged 43 minutes. Devin Booker, before he fouled out, had 35 minutes, or else he would have been right there with those guys in the 40s. That was just the game on Tuesday. If you look at it for the season, the top 10 in the NBA in minutes per game, Devin Booker, when I looked last, was 4th in minutes per game. Durant was 6th in minutes per game. You have two guys that are in the top 6 in minutes per game. Booker, 37.2 minutes per game, and Kevin Durant, 36.8 minutes per game. Feels like a disaster. You are asking a 36-year-old to weather the 6th most minutes per game, night in and night out. Add to that the pressure of this situation. Because while I think we've all accepted that this team isn't going to go anywhere this year, we've all accepted that this team, we are going to try to memory hole as quickly as possible. We are going to try to forget that this season ever happened. These guys still have to play the final 20-something games. They are going to have to hear this noise every single day for the final 24, 25 games that are left in this campaign. And here's the worst part. Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. Who's been the best player for the Phoenix Suns this year? Who's been the most consistent player for the Suns this year? When the Suns have needed a spark, which of those three guys more often than not has provided that spark? Was it Bradley Beal? The guy they moved to the bench? Is it Devin Booker, who statistically is having one of the worst years of his career? Still a good year in the big picture, but for him, a down year, not playing his best basketball. So that just leaves one guy as the player who's been the most consistent, as the player who's been the best on the Suns all year, and that is Kevin Durant. And so now the guy who's 36 years old, the guy who's played the 6th most minutes per game this season in the NBA, who also happens to be your best player, you can't afford to dial back his minutes. You can't afford to try to find him some rest. You can't afford to back off of the 36.8 minutes per game that he's playing because you need every single one of those 36 minutes. You need every single second of Kevin Durant on the floor if you are even going to remotely think about sneaking into the play-in tournament. And so where does that leave me today? I just wonder. Goes back to the question we asked at the beginning of the show, so we're kind of mirroring the 2 hours. We opened hour number 1 with this. We're opening hour number 2 with it. We're just looking at it in a different light. I just wonder if they run out of steam. Devin Booker's playing the 4th most minutes per game in the NBA. Kevin Durant, 36 years old, is playing the 6th most minutes per game in the NBA. They just are going to run out of steam. The heavy minutes, the heavy workload, the heavy pressure that is on, the losses, one after another, piling up on this basketball team. It just at some point is going to become too much. They're just going to get exhausted. And when that happens, if you think this is bad, if you think what we're watching right now is bad, when this thing truly bottoms out, it's going to look 10 times worse. And it's why I keep going back to, was Memphis the start of something or the end of something? Was that overtime loss in Memphis the start of them finding that extra gear? I keep using the softball team, my daughter's softball team that I coach, because a lot of the time it mirrors the conversations we have on this show. I don't design it this way, but I just said a moment ago, finding that extra gear. I can't tell you how many times in practice I tell the girls, you got to find that little extra. You got to find that want deep down that you want it more than the other teams that we're going to play when we go and play a tournament like we did a couple of weeks ago. We've got 2 games coming up this weekend. Those are back-to-back games. It's hot, starting to get warm out. It's 90-plus degrees this week. You got to find that little extra. Was Tuesday the Suns finding that little extra, and they're going to be more motivated here down the stretch, that they can do it, that their offense is good enough, that when things click, they can score with anybody in the league? Or was that the last gasp? Because there have been weekends where our girls go out there and we play great for an inning or two and we just run out of steam. We give it our best effort, but we just don't have that little extra in the tank. We've exhausted it all. Which one is it for this Phoenix Suns basketball team? I look at the heavy workload. I look at the pressure that is starting to mount and has already been mounting, the losses in games where you think you have victories, losses to teams you have no business losing to in Toronto, and I just feel the scale tipping in the direction of, I don't think this team's going to have much left. You might get a small little rally here over the next couple of days, but I'm just not sure there's anything left in the tank. Kevin Durant can't be playing the 6th most minutes per game in the NBA. He just can't. What have we said about Kevin Durant and his age? I have never questioned that the skills are all of a sudden going to go away. He is still one of the best scorers in the history of the NBA, and I think what you're going to see as he ages and as his game devolves is probably not the right word, but as his game weakens over time, what you're going to see is not that he all of a sudden isn't going to be able to score. It's just the consistency. He'll give you spurts. You'll see a game where he can go off or a small stretch where he shows you flashes of the old Kevin Durant. But is he going to be able to do that night in and night out for this basketball team and for whoever his future basketball team is going to be? We'll talk about that later on in this hour of the program. That's the concern that I have. And I have the concern that we're going to start to see that inconsistency, just like we've kind of seen it all year with this team, just in general, the inconsistency, that we're going to see that inconsistency here over the final 20-something games. Your best player, the oldest player in the starting group, it's just a recipe for disaster. Now, we have to do it. We have to do the thing. I'm not going to do it a little bit later on here in the show. I'll do it now. The importance meter. Producer Dylan, do you have the spreadsheet open? You do. Okay. The last game that we rated here on the show, I believe I was so angry with the team, I just said put a 10 down, and I don't care how many exclamation points that you put down. Did you put any down, or did we just leave it as a strict 10? We put exclamation points down. How many? Did you just hold your fist down on the keyboard and let like 20 of them roll off? I don't even remember. What game was it that I did that for? They all blur at this point. It was the Raptors game. Of course it was, because that's the one they lost. I should have known that that was the game it was. That it's the game that we say they absolutely have to have, and we put 400 exclamation points on it, and that's the one they lose. So tonight, they play New Orleans. They're home. I don't think this matters, but I just want to see how they're favored by the sports books. I just want to see how disappointed I'm going to be later. I just want to know. They are 7.5-point favorites at home against a 15-win basketball team. I don't know. You know what? We've kept this 1 to 10 the whole time, right? I'm changing the rules today. I'm changing the rules. 7.5-point favorites at home against a team that's won 15 games. Put a 14. You know what? Put a 15 down to match the number of wins the Pelicans have this season. That's how important this game is for the Phoenix Suns. It's a 15 out of 10. You lose tonight, I wonder if we are going to actually break down Suns basketball at all the rest of the way. If I'm going to even devote a single second to previewing games the rest of the way. So put a 15 down. That's how important this game is for the Phoenix Suns. It matches the number of wins that the Pelicans have this season. And you know what? While we're at it, put 2 exclamation points next to it. The most important game of the season so far for the Phoenix Suns. You win this game, you at least just allow me to be calm tomorrow. I'm not going to give you your flowers. I'm not going to throw you a party. Or I'm not going to play celebration music for you tomorrow on the program. No, you just did what you were supposed to do, and you allowed us to just breathe for a second. We're just going to relax for 2 hours on a Friday and not lose our minds. Now, if you lose, I am going to go completely crazy tomorrow on the program. If you want good radio tomorrow, if you're a fan of entertaining radio, you're probably rooting for this team to lose and then get by your radios at 11:02, 11:03 on Friday, tomorrow, because that's going to be explosive. I might lose my mind tomorrow if they lose tonight to the Pelicans. So a 15 with a couple exclamation points, that's how important this game is for the Suns tonight. And who knows? If they lose, we may retire the importance meter the rest of the way. We're going to retire it. We'll get some funeral music for it, and we'll just end it for this year. We'll bring it back next year, but we're just going to send it off into an early retirement if they lose tonight.